and suddenly I was alone in this big apartment that needed to be cleaned, it needed to be furnished, it needed to be paid for. I did a 3-month dating, social media, and alcohol detox. During those 3 months, I actually learned how to kind of love myself and take care of myself and put myself first. And just that contentment of being alone and being happy to be alone was so amazing and empowering. So you guys might be able to tell this video was filmed in my old apartment. I filmed this video in February 2023 before I moved. I never got around to editing it, but I figured with the fall coming up, the season of change, people may be moving away for school, I thought this was the right time to share this video with you guys. But really, whatever time of the year you're watching this, whenever this video finds you, I really hope that you enjoy it, that it can bring you some comfort and some advice. It was so nostalgic for me stepping back into my old apartment while editing this video, and it's just such a special video for me. So I really hope that you enjoy it. Let's get into it. Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel and welcome to a really special video that I am so excited to share with you. This video is going to be all about living alone. It's going to be my story, my tips, my experience, as well as a Q&A, and I really hope you will enjoy it. This video is a little bit emotional for me because I don't know, just everything I'm gonna talk about has been such a special time in my life, and filming this video is coming sort of at the cusp of a lot of change. This is going to be probably the last video that I film in this apartment. So to close up this chapter, I wanted to film this video, recount my experience, share all of my tips and tricks before they leave my mind, because I think it's a really special and beautiful experience. So that is what we are going to be talking about today. I hope you will enjoy this video. It's probably going to be a long and rambly one. I've got myself a cup of tea and I don't really have a script or anything to follow. I'm just really gonna talk from the heart, like I said. So get cozy and let's talk about living alone.
Hey darling, can I tell you what's been on my mind? Sick and tired of the 9 to 5 in the city life. Hey darling, we could get out of town, see the beautiful world around, wanna see it now. Pack our bags and get in that car, leave a little note and we'll drive real far. Let's get out, we can leave this city, let's drive to the open air.
I feel like most specifically, this video is going to cover living alone in your 20s, but I hope that my tips can be valuable at any age. However, my experience really was in my 20s. I've been living alone for almost 4 years now. I'm currently 26 and I first moved into this apartment in 2019 when I was 22 years old, right about to turn 23. It's crazy because when I look back, I feel like I was so young. I feel like I've grown and changed so much in these past 3.5 years. So much has happened in the world, so much has happened in my life. And this apartment, like these 4 walls, if you will, really were a space for all of that change to happen. And I just feel like there's so much energy in here. I don't even know how to explain it. Okay, so moving away from my feels. I moved into this apartment in July of 2019 here in Quebec, or in Montreal where I live. July 1st is like the standard moving date. Everyone seems to move on July 1st and most leases run a full year from July 1st to the end of June the following year. I actually never visited this apartment in person before I signed the lease. I was studying abroad in Australia, finishing my studies. It was my last semester of university and it was time for me to move. I had to move out. I had been living, prior to living in Australia, I'd been living with my roommate who is still my best friend to this day, Camilla. We had been living together all through university for almost 5 years. And I knew that when I started my full-time job that I wanted to experience living alone. I knew exactly what neighborhood of Montreal I wanted to live in, so I was looking for 1-bedroom apartments in that area. I had set a kind of budget. Back then, I really didn't know a lot about budgeting. It's actually crazy how naive I was. So I set, a kind kind of a rough budget. I think I had decided on $1,000 being my max. And there was no real calculation in how I decided that number. I just figured $1,000 was reasonable. And back then, you really could get a 1-bedroom or a studio apartment for under $1,000 in Montreal. COVID really caused rent prices to go up, but back then that was not an unreasonable request. So I'm looking on Facebook and on Kijiji and on all of the sites, and I'm not really finding anything I like. At the same time, I had a friend who lived in this apartment complex. They were these old factories turned into really, really nice modern lofts in that exact neighborhood that I wanted to live in. And it was my dream to have an apartment like hers. They had a Facebook group for all of the people who kind of lived in this complex. I was let into the Facebook group. I posted that I was looking for a place to live. Someone replied with the link to this very apartment, and when I saw the photos, I was in love. I was like, I have to have that place. I love it. That is my apartment. It was way over the budget of $1,000 that I had decided on, and it was a lot bigger and way, way, way nicer, more luxurious than anything else I had looked at. The thing is, once I saw this apartment, everything else didn't look as nice. I had my sights set on this one. I had pretty much made up my mind, and I basically made some backwards budget where I calculated my salary and figured that I could afford this place that was $350 more than my budgeted desire. So my rent here was $1,350. Like I said, I knew nothing about budgeting, so I didn't even take into account the fact that my salary was going to be taxed. So while I was making on paper $65,000 a year, taxes were gonna come off of that. I didn't know anything about that. So this apartment ended up actually being way less affordable than I had originally calculated. That will come back into the story time later. But at this point, I'm flying high. I'm so excited to move into this apartment. Do we see this like crazy lighting that's coming in? Okay, that's a bit better. So I signed the lease from Australia. In July, I came back here, I moved in, and I will never forget that first night of living in this apartment. The very first night, my dad and my sister were here. I think my dad slept on like a mattress pad up in the loft, and my sister and I slept on my mattress downstairs. I was super jet lagged, I was super disoriented, and I woke up feeling really, really confused. That very next day in the morning, my dad and my sister left, and I remember being like, wait, what? You're leaving me? Like, don't go. And they had to go, they had stuff to do. They drove back to Ottawa, and I was alone. And I don't think I'd ever felt not loneliness, but aloneness like that before. I was back in, my home country, in my city that I'd been living in for 5 years, but I was super disoriented, jet lagged, like I said, and suddenly I was alone in this big apartment that needed to be cleaned, it needed to be furnished, it needed to be paid for. And so began my adventure. That summer of 2019, I think will forever be one of my best and favorite summers. I learned so much. I had so much fun decorating this place. I don't even really remember being all that stressed or anything. And I was never really lonely because I always had friends over. I was always doing stuff. Basically, I was in a little bit of a dream summer because I should also mention, I wasn't even working full time. I had just graduated school and I was taking July and August kind of off of work. I was working part-time at a spin studio, but other than that, I wasn't really working. One of the first challenges I encountered while living alone was my kind of fear of the dark. So since I was a child, I've always been really, really afraid of the dark. I'm really afraid of anything paranormal, anything to do with like demons, ghosts, like that scares me so much. And I was always afraid of the dark. Even when I lived with my parents, when I lived with a roommate, I would get spooked so badly. And I remember moving in here one of the nights getting spooked. It was really dark in here, and I was on the phone with my friend and I was like, I don't know what to do. Like, I have to go downstairs, I have to pee, because I was upstairs in the loft, which is where my bed is. I was upstairs and I was on the phone with her. I was like, I have to pee, but I'm too scared to go downstairs. And she was like, Zoey, get a grip. You can't be scared anymore. And she was studying to be a psychologist, and she had this kind of like, I guess it was some psychological like anti-fear training. You have to like shock yourself and expose yourself to whatever it is you're afraid of. So she was like, if you want to get over your fear, you have to go sit on your couch in the pitch black and just sit there until you get out of your fear. I don't even know if that's actually like a proper way to get over fear. I really don't think it is. I think you're supposed to do it slowly. But the idea of sitting downstairs in the dark terrified me so much that I just said, just get over it, Zoey. You have no choice but to get over it. And from that moment on, I never allowed my mind to go back into that fear, because I knew that if I did that, I would just be torturing myself. So that was my first challenge, and I guess I got over it pretty quick, which is really lucky. I would still have moments from time to time where I would get a little bit spooked, but I would always tell myself, don't go there, don't go there. My real challenges started when my real life started, which is in September when I started my full-time consulting job. I was so looking forward to this job. I had such high expectations. I was over the moon about starting this job. I felt like I was living my dream life. I had my dream apartment locked down, and now I was about to start my dream job. But many of you know how the story goes. It turned out that that was not my dream job whatsoever. I went from this really, really high feeling of just like excitement, high on life, living my best life, to pretty depressed because I hated work. I hated every single day. I hated coming home from work to this empty apartment. I remember feeling so lonely, so scared. I would cry all of the time. Also, once I started getting paid, the reality kicked in that I didn't know how to budget, and suddenly I was living kind of paycheck to paycheck because I was shopping like crazy. I was trying to pay off my student loans. I had this really expensive apartment in the end of the day, especially compared to what my peers were paying for smaller and maybe less luxurious apartments, but what they were paying on the same salary as me. My finances were an absolute mess. I also had this kind of problem with one of my coworkers who really liked to give me unsolicited advice, and back then I was 23 at the time. I took everything everyone said truly to heart, and I really let it fester inside of me and bother me, which is something that now that I'm a little bit older, I'm a lot better at not doing. But basically, this coworker told me, like, how can you live where you live? You shouldn't have that nice of an apartment by yourself. You should have waited until you have like a boyfriend to split that with. And I really internalized that message, and I began to feel so guilty for having this apartment that I almost didn't even enjoy it anymore. Or whenever I would be happy, whenever I would be enjoying it, I would get hit with this intense guilt. So that was really sucky. That whole period of my life from September 2019 to Christmas 2019 was very, very challenging. I ended up changing jobs. You guys know that whole story as well. But what I really want to focus on is jumping forward to March 2020. That is when we went into lockdown because of COVID, and that was a whole new challenge. I don't think I've ever told this story, but at the beginning of COVID, I actually was dating this guy. It was like not serious at all. It was 100% a COVID fling, but he kind of like moved in with me temporarily for a couple of months during that initial lockdown because nobody knew what was going on. At that time, we were literally not allowed to leave the house. So I feel like for 3 months, he kind of like lived here. And that was really a way for me to deflect any potential loneliness. I was so afraid of being alone during that September to, let's say, COVID period of my life that I was constantly trying to fill my time leaving the house. I was dating a lot, just doing anything to not be alone. Like I said, that fling was really a COVID fling, and it didn't last very long. So when him and I stopped seeing each other and we were still in a very locked down state working from home, that is when I got hit with an even more intense loneliness, and that was really, really challenging. Over that period of dealing with the loneliness, there's really two things that helped me tremendously. The first was my friendship with Camilla really like blossomed and developed because we were both in a similar situation where we were kind of living alone, working from home, going through COVID, and we really leaned on each other, and just it was like the best thing that ever could have happened. But what was nice was we weren't leaning on each other in the same way that sometimes you lean on a romantic partner. We would spend every single weekend together, and during the weeks we would be alone. So that was kind of my like intro to being alone and actually dealing with my loneliness. Then I remember in January of, what would it be, 2021, I guess, I did a 3-month dating, social media, and alcohol detox. And that is where the biggest change really occurred, because that is when I finally had to sit and be alone with my thoughts and actually deal with my loneliness. During those 3 months, I actually learned how to kind of love myself and take care of myself and put myself first. And that was the most invaluable thing I ever could have done. Looking back at my story like this, it's kind of crazy that it took me a whole year of living alone to actually learn how to be alone. But I can with confidence say that learning how to be alone is the best thing that I ever did. And that's kind of the takeaway that I want you guys to have for this video and from this story, is that living alone is amazing, but in order to truly enjoy it and appreciate it and get the most out of it, you have to actually learn to be alone. Learning to be alone, I think, is how we learn to love ourselves. It's how we learn to take care of ourselves. And I think it's just a really, really beautiful thing, especially as women. You know, we are constantly flooded with a message of change yourself, you need a lover, you need a soulmate, you need a person, you need more friends, you need more stuff. And love and friendship and sometimes material items can be really, really great, and they can be fun and they can enhance our life. But if at your core you don't love yourself and you don't know how to be alone with yourself, I think you're gonna go through life always feeling like something is missing. And now you don't need to live alone to learn how to be alone. I just think it's really important to mention that though, because just because you live alone doesn't mean you're going to learn how to be alone, because like I said, you can fill your time with all different kinds of things. You can fill your time with dating, with friends, with partying, with work. So I really encourage everyone who's watching this to take some time and reflect about whether or not you live alone. What does it mean to be alone with yourself and to enjoy your own company? Now, it's not to say that from that moment in 2021 when I completed my cleanse that I was amazing and happy and I never had a sad moment or I never felt lonely again, but it really, really did change me as a person. And from there, I was able to enjoy living alone so much more. Funny enough, from there, I was also able to invite real love into my life, but that's a whole other story. The other thing I wanna say, just to kind of wrap up this whole thing about living alone, especially as I think about the fact that I'm about to transition into living with a boyfriend, the chances are you will find someone to spend your life with, you will find someone to be in a romantic partnership with, and you will live with them, or maybe you'll have multiple partners throughout your life. You might have kids. And so while you're young, having this opportunity to live alone could be your one and only chance at living alone. So for that reason, I would say take a chance, go out on your own. You don't need to rush into living with a significant other. You can find affordable ways to live alone. And I just think it's a really, really special lifetime experience that if you have an interest in living that out, you should definitely take that as a sign that this is an avenue that you want to explore. I just had to close the curtain because the sun was getting all wonky, but now let's move into the Q&A part of this video. I feel like I'll be able to get a little bit more tangible here and hopefully give you guys some good tips. I posted on Instagram and got so many questions, so we might need to do a part 2. Let me know in the comments if you would like a part 2 and also if you have any other questions or things you'd like to know for that video. But let's jump right in. First question is, do you think you'll miss living alone, or are you very confident in living with JS? I'll start by saying I'm very confident, otherwise I wouldn't be doing this. I am giving up, so to speak, a really, really beautiful apartment. At the beginning of this video, I told you guys how back then $13.50 was very expensive for a place like this. Actually, I should say for a place in Montreal, period. But now $13.50 is very cheap. So if I wasn't confident in living with JS, if I thought it was only gonna last a year, I would be looking at moving in with him, then moving out into a much more expensive real estate market. So I just wouldn't do that. For me, also moving in with a partner is a really, really big deal because I have grown to love living alone and I think it's really special. So I wanted the time that I move in with my partner to be like very kind of serious and very long term. So I do feel really, really confident in living with him. That being said, I'm sure there's gonna be times where I miss living alone. I think I'm an extrovert, but I definitely have moments where I recharge by being alone. So I think in that sense, I might miss it sometimes, but I am gonna have an office space, so I will be able to get my kind of peace and quiet by going to my office. So I don't really know if I'll miss it. Overall, I don't think so, otherwise I wouldn't be making this move. Did you do a sinking fund for furnitures or other big item purchases? Great question, no. Like I said at the beginning of this video, I knew nothing about budgeting when I first moved in here. I am really lucky that my dad is kind of this like magic finder. He always finds stuff, literally sometimes side of the road in the garbage, but he always has furniture. Like if you're like, oh, I need a bed, I need a dresser, my dad's like, I got you. So he gave me a lot of furniture that I kind of DIY'd, painted, etc. My couch was a hand-me-down. I bought a lot of stuff on Facebook Marketplace, but I did not save for it, not at all. The tough thing about furniture is you kind of need it right away. Like you can't really live without a couch. You know, there's certain things you can live without, mostly decor, but you kind of need a couch, you kind of need a coffee table, you kind of need a dining table, you kind of need a desk. So for me, I feel like those were just things that I had to close my eyes and pay for, but I did try and do it as affordably as possible. And even looking forward to the new place, it's just gonna be like finding stylish and nice and quality, affordable pieces. I got a lot of questions about safety and feeling safe, which I could go on about for so long. First of all, I just think it's really sad that that's the world we live in. I definitely have some tips on that though. I am very lucky. I always felt very safe where I live. I feel like I've taken certain kind of precautions in order to feel safe. And you also just have to decide that you are safe. Like, I want you guys to internalize the fact that you are safe. I want you to set up all of these parameters to ensure that you are safe, and then constantly remind yourself that you are safe. Because if you're gonna live alone, if you're gonna go through this experience, but you're always looking over your shoulder and you're always feeling afraid, you're not gonna enjoy it. First things first, my biggest tip is do not live on the first floor when you are living alone. And by first floor, I mean anywhere that somebody has easy access to your window. There are so many apartments in Montreal that are like ground floor, and when you're walking on the street, you can see right into their window, you can see right into the person's bed. First of all, I just don't feel like that is safe in terms of getting robbed. Like if someone sees your computer, bam, they smash the window, grab your computer. But as women, we also have to worry for our physical safety. You just don't want to have easy access like that. You don't want anyone to see you while you're sleeping. So I would definitely recommend making sure that you have an apartment where your windows are off the ground that no one can access. The next thing I would say to be very careful with is social media. It doesn't matter if you have a big following or not. It doesn't matter if you have a public account or not. Be careful. Never selfie in front of your address with what street you're on. Try and be discreet with where you live, because the last thing you want is some weirdo to get some idea and follow you home or show up at your door or whatever. I guess the last thing I would say on safety is prioritize a safer neighborhood. Even if you have to pay a little bit more, it's not worth saving money but feeling unsafe, whether it's for the neighborhood, whether it's for the type of apartment and the building that it's in. Your safety is number one. Your safety is more important than having a big old fancy apartment. Your safety is more important than saving 50 bucks a month. Like, safety is number one. Did you have trouble getting used to the silence after living with friends previously? This is really interesting. There were a few questions like that about the silence, about the lack of noise, and I never actually considered that, because when I lived with Camilla, we had really opposite schedules. I was already alone quite a bit in the apartment, so I was kind of used to the silence. There was never a lot of noise around. I feel like if you came from living in a house with a bunch of roommates, then it would feel really quiet. But I still do feel the quietness. I just never associated it really to living alone. And I always have music on in the background. I always have a podcast on, to the point where sometimes I have to remind myself, like, it's okay to be in silence. But you can use YouTube, music, podcasts again to fill up that noise. But I would just say, kind of similar to what I just said, is it's okay to be silent sometimes. It's okay to be quiet, and it's really nice. For moments though where you don't want that quiet and you don't want a podcast or actual music, I love having like chill lo-fi or chill kind of jazz in the background. That's really nice to just make a little bit of noise. You can also find these videos on YouTube that have these kind of ambient sounds in the background. I really like, I think it's Calmed by Nature is the name of the channel. They will do like an 8-hour-long jazz playlist, but there's also cafe sounds in the background. So I really like those for keeping me company while I'm working from home. Favorite memories from your current apartment. I think my favorite memories are, there's a few. Bringing Maggie home here was really special. Like, she was so tiny and cute, and that was amazing. When I first moved in, going to the pool and just feeling like a grown-up for the first time, and feeling like I had the whole world ahead of me, feeling like I had accomplished this really big goal of finishing university, landing my dream job. That was really amazing. We've had like barbecues here. We've had some really fun parties. And there's even just little moments of totally being by myself, sitting on the couch reading, nights in, watching TV, like feeling so content by myself. That has been really amazing and rewarding as well. What have you learned about yourself? That is such a good question. I think one of the things that I'm so grateful that I learned about myself is that, one, I can be alone. Like, I don't want to be alone for my whole life, but if I had to, I could do it because I've done it. I can cook for myself, I can clean for myself, I can lift up heavy things, I can put a nail in a wall, I can do anything. I can do anything. And that is so empowering to know that you are all you need. I can't even express that enough. I also learned that I really like myself for the most part. Of course, I have moments of low self-esteem, but I'm proud of myself. I like myself. I can do anything in the world that I want. I can be independent financially. I can be independent in terms of just getting stuff done. And that's a really important thing, I think, to be and to know about yourself as you move through the rest of life, that if ever anything were to happen, you can take care of yourself, you can lean on yourself, and you like yourself. So many people said, not a question, just want to say good luck with the move. I'm so grateful for you guys. Thank you so much. Do you recommend for everyone to try it once? I don't want to say like a blanket statement, everyone needs to live alone, because you could be watching this video and be later on in life and you've never lived alone and you're perfectly fine and you're happy that way. So I'm not going to say it's like the thing to do for everyone, but I would say if you have that itch, if you feel called towards living alone, then I definitely recommend it. This is so good. Favorite thing you've only done if possible, favorite thing you've done that's only possible if you live alone. Okay, this is a crazy memory, but one of my favorite moments, and this goes back to what I just said about learning that I liked myself, is there was one time, this was during COVID, I met this guy on a dating app. We were talking, he was super, super handsome, and I was really looking forward to meeting him, went on a date, and I got there, and yes, he was so handsome, but my God, was this guy boring. I had gotten all dressed up, I had done my makeup, I had a cute outfit, I Ubered to his house. I got there and he was so boring and I was so bored and there was no chemistry. I made some excuse, I left early, I Ubered home, and I remember getting back home, washing my face, getting in my bed and being like, I don't need that. I don't need that guy. I don't need to spend time, entertaining someone who I find boring. And just that contentment of being alone and being happy to be alone was so amazing and empowering. And that can only happen when you live alone. The person on that question gave an example of like a rager or like a party. I had some good parties here, some good pre-drinks and stuff, but I feel like that would have been possible living with a partner or living with a roommate as well. So really, I think the favorite things that I've done that are only possible living alone are those moments of pure contentment being by yourself. Dealing with loneliness or procrastination, I think those are two very different things. The thing with loneliness, I think, is sometimes you have to sit with it. Allow yourself to be lonely. So many times we want to stop that feeling of loneliness. So we call a friend or we go on a dating app or we go on social media, but try just sitting and dealing with being alone. And once you get over that uncomfortableness, you'll find that it's really beautiful to be alone. And I think that's really valuable, and you kind of just have to go through it. You can't go around it. And then as with procrastination, it's so true that when you are alone, especially working from home, there's no one to hold you accountable. The best thing for that for me, wake up early, make a schedule for yourself, consistently stick to that schedule. So many questions about budgeting. I feel like that needs its own video, but consider everything. Consider internet, insurance, taxes, everything. That was my biggest mistake. I want to end on one last question, which is again, the question of feeling lonely. So many people, I think, are worried about feeling lonely when they live alone. And I just want to say, alone doesn't equal lonely. Loneliness comes from within. You can be in a room full of people and feel lonely, and you can be alone and not feel lonely. So don't let that be the thing that stops you. You will learn to love yourself. You will learn to be okay being alone, and it's going to be the most empowering thing you've ever done for yourself. And I truly think it's going to set you up for success later in life, in all areas of your life. All right, you guys, that is a wrap on this video. Let me know what you think. Let me know what your thoughts are. Are you interested in moving out alone? Do you already live alone? What does that look like for you? Let me know in the comments. I am so grateful for you spending these past however many minutes, I don't even know where we're at now, with me talking about living alone. I hope you enjoyed it, and I will see you very soon. We've got an apartment tour coming up, moving vlogs, so many videos. Make sure you're subscribed so you don't miss it. I love you. Bye.